maybe you can go through a little bit about the side gig of yours. Like, I know you're Batman here, so in that case, you're Batman at night, and then in the mornings you're Bruce Wayne. So maybe if you can just educate the audience a little bit about who you are, how you got to CADTH, and a little bit, these other things that you do on the side that I assume you're very, very passionate about.
Oh, sure, sure, Lester. So, buckle up, and I'm going to give you the Terry story. So, I'll spare you, and I'll give you just the highlights and the abbreviated version. But, um, I was, like a lot of folks, I was pursuing a gymnastics career in Cirque du Soleil, and after a horrific accident, I did what most do, and that is go to science. And so, science was always something that was near and dear to me, and sort of pursued that, and it led all the way up to a PhD. And it really helped me understand the things within science that really resonated with me, and understanding the brain and how it works was so captivating. And that idea of being able to be in a lab and think creatively and do research and experiments really got my attention, and I invested heavily in that. It was there that I understood and started to play with the idea of pharmacology and how drugs impact the brain. And so in doing like sort of live experiments, in rodent models, to looking at electrophysiology. And for those who don't know what that is recording from individual brain cells in an animal or human, almost always an animal, that you do that. And you can record to see how signals are working, how different brain regions are positioned, what their function is, et cetera, et cetera. In that journey, you sometimes can use a variety of drugs to dissect a signal to understand, is it this type of transmitter? Or what does this drug do? Does it block the signal? And it helps you sort of decipher and do a little CSI and figure out how things are working in the brain. I found that exhilarating. I'm using different drugs to like investigate stuff, and it became very cool for me. So electrophysiology is a really fine technique that requires like fine motor skill, patience to record from brain cells, and a rat brain, as you can imagine, is painfully hard. So it really tests your patience. And after doing that, and completing my PhD, and sort of writing the articles that, as most researchers do, I felt happy, but I didn't feel necessarily completely fulfilled. I felt like there was more. So I continued to do the research, working at the National Research Council of Canada, looking at using the same technique to study Alzheimer's and stroke models and ischemia, really great, helpful things. But I felt I needed to do more. A lot of researchers can contest to this. You work in your little bubble to answer those very specific questions, and you publish this very specific paper, and you hope that billions will read, but the 9 who read it say, well done, and 4 of those are your family. You're kind of like, wow, did I make a difference? Am I making any change here? That was when my attention was brought to CADTH, a group doing something that's related to health policy and helping decision change and looking at evidence to make decisions. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know we had something like that. I think a lot of folks in the community assume there's a magical hidden body that tests and checks all of our medicines and controls what we get. And to me, it was just, I had no idea what that looked like. And I was sort of given the opportunity. I applied, I got in, and I was a research officer where I actually worked on files for specific medicines, and where you get right into the weeds of clinical trials and understanding. And when I saw the amount of rigor that went into a clinical review for a single drug, and the expert review committee and the recommendations that come out of that, and how that gets parlayed into the system, blew my mind. So I was in love, and I said, that's it. So that was where the love affair began. And so for the next 5 years, I continued at CADTH working on that and learning all the different aspects of the business. But after 5 years, I started to wonder, manufacturers are producing this information and then they're submitting it to Health Canada and CADTH for review. What is it like over there, and how are they positioning themselves, and what work are they doing? And so I think, to the chagrin of many, I switched teams and I moved to industry for a stint for 5 years. And there I learned the business in terms of medical research. And I was a senior real world evidence scientist for a manufacturer. And I learned a lot. And I was part of a regional international team for Europe and Canada. And so I was able to see how things are being done in other countries, Germany, Spain, France. It was eye-opening, and it really helped you understand the global community that we're in, and how data is not so different. Yes, our countries are different, but the questions and the issues that we face are very, very similar. And COVID was a fantastic example of how that crystallize things for the world and how we all have a similar problem, and that's the COVID virus, right? So that for me was really, really fantastic. And after my stint in industry, my friends at CADTH came back to me and saying, listen, this whole RWE thing, what is RWE? And this is in advance of your podcast, Lester and Kostas. They said, what's this all about, and what should we do? And they enticed me to come back and say, can you help us set up things and discuss the ideas around real world evidence and go down that avenue? And I was happy to. And I said, this is really great. And so I started my round trip back to CADTH on my second tour. And I've now been back at CADTH collectively. We've been at CADTH for almost 12 years. And so I clearly understand I'm very vested in real world evidence. I'm really vested in evidence for decision making. Then 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to develop and build this post-market drug evaluation program and this collab network. And for me, it was all those years of work and understanding and travels and led to the culmination of the creation of something, a lever that was going to have some impact. So that's why sometimes I get a bit jazzed. I apologize, but it's because it's everything coming together to allow us to do something really, really novel and useful. Now, throughout that process, I, like many in our community of researchers, I'm a workaholic. And so I said, that's all great, but other opportunities pop up and I have trouble saying no. And so when my old alma mater came knocking saying, Terry, would you be interested in teaching? You'd be great at this with your experience. Are you interested? And at first I said no. And they said, that's too bad. We've already put your name down on the course. I said, okay, I guess I'm teaching the class. And so off I went, and it's now been 18 years of me teaching at Carleton University. And it's been a pleasure to be back in that community, to feel that energy that students bring, the open eyes of the pure eyes, the virgin eyes that haven't been beaten down by the travels that we have, and to help educate them on a variety of things. So my mantra for teaching is, and we've all been in this place, we've had profs that we're terrible. And we're like, why is this guy teaching this class? He so doesn't want to be here, and he's just reading out of the text. I said, if I was ever given that opportunity, I would do it completely different. And I'm lecturing not because I'm a professor and I run a lab and I have to. I'm doing it because I want to. And I want to give back to the school and to the community and the student population and help educate them. Because this stuff is cool. For us nerds, I love this stuff. This is pretty cool. And so I like to bring in my real world experience and real world evidence on RWE and CADTH and the world as it relates to pharmacology and making decisions to the class. That's outside of the textbook. That's a lot of the stuff they'll never hear and see about anywhere else. And to me, that's exhilarating. And the feedback I typically get from students is, man, that class was awesome. I heard all this stuff that I've never heard of before, and it's really opened my eyes, and I've decided to shift my direction into something more aligned with what you're doing. And can we be best friends? I get a lot of best friends things. I unfortunately have to limit that, but it's been great. So that's why I do some of those things, and that's a bit of my journey.